to talk to you about all the things you need to know before drinking coffee, from the types of coffee, the amount of coffee, and how you should be storing the coffee beans as well, if you want to maximize the benefits of one of my favorite drinks that I personally drink every single day. Now, we've talked about on the podcast before about how coffee is the largest contributor to our daily intake of polyphenols. It's one of the most consumed drinks across the world, and these beneficial plant compounds support health in a number of different ways. From gut health, because coffee is essentially a prebiotic. That's something that supports those gut microbes that are slaving away, reducing inflammation, supporting your mood, etc., etc. It also lowers, or is associated with lowering the risk of cancer, depression, and Alzheimer's. But how we drink it does make a big difference. And these are the things that you need to know before you reach for that daily cup. The first thing is the dose. So how much should you be drinking every single day? The simple answer is the sweet spot is 3 to 4 cups per day. What does that even mean? So if you actually look at the studies and you look at the amounts that they're putting in these cups, it equates to about 2 to 3 standard mugs of filter coffee. Now, this dose is linked to the largest health benefits, but you do also have to recognize that there is going to be a sweet spot for everyone. Not everyone is going to benefit from having 3 cups. I know personally, if I had 3 cups every single day, I probably wouldn't sleep. So you need to ensure that you're titrating it against the potential trade-offs that can be excess caffeine and a knock-on impact on sleep. And if you're knocking on your sleep, you're knocking off your sleep, you're not going to be looking after your mortality or all-cause mortality, your cancer mortality, all these different things. So do take this with a pinch of salt. But looking at the studies, the largest benefits are seen with 2 to 3 standard mugs of coffee. On that note around dose, a good approach might actually be alternating with decaf. So having 1 or 2 regular cups in the morning, sort of like what I do, and then 1 decaf later on in the day, because decaf still retain some of those polyphenols. So you can get all the polyphenols, or most of the polyphenols, without the negative impact of caffeine. Now, there is loads of different types of decaf out there. You want to be looking for one that has the Swiss mountain water method of caffeine removal, or the mountain water method of removal. I personally choose Excel Coffee because they are fantastic. They lab test theirs. They're really high in polyphenols, and that's proven by the science. But that method of decaffeination is far less harsh than other methods that require solvents that can be quite harsh on the actual beans, and actually removing a lot of the polyphenols as well. So you want to go for a method that's actually quite gentle and sensitive to the fact that we want to be preserving the polyphenols in this. Now, if you're an espresso drinker like myself, this really equates to around 4 espressos every single day. So I tend to go for either a single or double espresso. So that means 2 coffee interactions per day. And I try not to drink my coffee after 12 p.m. unless it's decaf as well. So that's the dose. When you time your last cup is very important. That's the second thing. So when you drink your coffee. Now, research suggests having your last cup of coffee 8 to 9 hours before bedtime to avoid affecting your sleep. But again, this is the average. I know that if I drank coffee 8 hours before I went to bed, I probably would still struggle to go to sleep. So if you know that you are sensitive to caffeine, you might want to extend that period of time by which you're not having any caffeinated drinks whatsoever. So if you go to bed at 10 p.m. and you know that you're particularly sensitive, you might want to finish having your coffee by 10 a.m. And that's actually something that I personally do myself, because I know I'm pretty sensitive to caffeine, and I don't need a genomic test to tell me that. I just know intuitively that I'm not the best metabolizer of caffeine. And this difference is actually underpinned by the science as well. The elimination or half-life, so the time it takes for me to metabolize half of this double espresso, can range from 9.5 hours in certain people, mine's probably a little bit more than that, to 1.5 hours in some others as well. So there are some really fast metabolizers of caffeine out there that can have an espresso at dinner and still go to bed fine. Most people are not in that camp, so I would hasten to advise that you shouldn't be doing that and go for decaf if you can. But yeah, that just just detailing the range there, that looking at the range of caffeine metabolizers out there, it's pretty far and wide. Just a quick one. If you're enjoying this kind of content, you will love our free newsletter called Seasonal Sundays. It goes into depth on a seasonal ingredient every Sunday, and we talk about the nutritional medicine benefits, the research, and the culinary uses of an ingredient every Sunday with recipes included. You can get access to the free newsletter in the link just down below. There are other factors beyond genetics like age, medications, smoking status, alcohol, obesity. So just base your caffeine intake according to your sleep and how you feel it might affect your sleep as well. The third thing is choosing quality coffee. Now, the health benefits of coffee can vary a lot because of the amount of polyphenols like chlorogenic acid, also abbreviated to CGA. This isn't the same in every cup. For example, a study testing 104 espressos bought in cafes showed that the CGA levels can range from 6 milligrams to 188 milligrams per cup. Each stage of this coffee production, from the plant to the cup, has a huge impact on the polyphenol content. So you want to be choosing a coffee that has the highest amount of this CGA. The CGA, which is just one of the polyphenols that you find in coffee. The coffee's got hundreds of polyphenols in. You want to be looking for some attributes of the coffee that maximize that CGA. And here are a couple of them. Organic. So organic usually uses fewer pesticides. And what this means is that the plant has to work harder to boost the level of their polyphenols in the plant to protect against insects and other pests. The reason why we have polyphenols in plants, the reason why these plants produce polyphenols is because they are natural insecticide, they are natural pesticide. That doesn't sound very nice that we're consuming these pesticides that are naturally found in plants, but this is what leads to the anti-inflammatory effect, the antioxidant effect when we consume it in the amounts that we find in things like organic coffee and organic fruits and vegetables. We actually want some of these natural insecticides, as weird as it is to explain like that. What this effect is called is something called the hormetic effect. So in layman terms, a little bit of bad does some good, or a little bit of pain makes you stronger. This is essentially what polyphenols are doing in our bodies. They are irritating our cells ever so slightly, and they're actually creating a net beneficial effect. Sort of like exercise. This is the way I sort of explain the hormesis effect. So when you go to an exercise and you do your bicep curls, what you're doing is causing localized inflammation. You're causing localized muscle shearing. If anyone was to look at under a microscope and see what you're doing to your muscles, they would conclude incorrectly that this is not a good activity. You should not be exercising. But the net effect is a bigger muscle, a more resilient muscle, better cells, improved metabolism, all the benefits that we know around exercise. So the net effect of this stress, which is exercise, is actually beneficial. The same thing with natural pesticides that you find in plants, and more so in organic plants as well. So you want to go for organic. That's the type of coffee you want. You want to also go for a light to medium roast. The reason why you want a light to medium roast is because you're going to be removing less of these polyphenols. When you take polyphenols to high temperature, you destroy those bonds, you lessen the quantity of those polyphenols. A light to medium roast boosts the flavor, which is why we want to drink coffee in the first place. It boosts those aromas, and it takes it to a level where you're not destroying polyphenols. You're not destroying all of those polyphenols. And the other thing is you want to go for freshly roasted as much as possible as well, again, to preserve those polyphenols. So if you have a roasting date over the last 1 to 2 weeks, that's great, because the longer you leave that coffee, so an old coffee that's 6 months from roasting, you've degraded a lot of those polyphenols. So you want to ensure that you're getting a recent roast date, and a light to medium roast as well. Whole beans are something that I think is also important. In the same way, you want to ensure that you're getting whole spices and grinding them yourself. You're oxidizing them less. You're exposing the interior of that coffee bean or spice to less oxygen. So your polyphenols are going to be higher. They're going to be more preserved. So you want to get whole beans that you grind yourself. And I think this is a bonus, traceability and independent lab testing. You want to trace where these beans are coming from. I know that, for example, Excel Coffee, they source their beans at high altitude because that high altitude, again, is another stress. In the same way, not relying on pesticides is another stress. So the organic plant has to fight even harder and produce more polyphenols if it wants to survive. And also independent lab testing means that you're actually testing to determine what the level of polyphenols are in that individual product. So that's a bit of a bonus, but that's sort of what I look for myself. So in terms of choosing quality coffee, go for organic, light to medium roast, whole beans that you grind yourself, traceability and independent lab testing if you can, and freshly roasted I think is going to be good as well, because you're going to get less of that degradation. So that's the third thing. The fourth thing, before you drink any coffee, the fourth thing is to ensure that you are storing and brewing your coffee in the best way possible. So I'll give you the best way possible, and you can choose what you prefer to do. So storing, I think, is very important. You want to store your whole beans, preferably, properly in an airtight container, away from light, away from moisture, and away from oxygen. This will preserve the polyphenol content because you're getting less of the oxidation process, you're less of the degradation. The light can also reduce the polyphenol content. So you want to get a nice dark container, or at least put it into a cupboard, and you want it away from moisture so it doesn't grow mold or any other microbes that can again degrade the quality of your coffee and even introduce pathogens into your coffee as well. So storing properly, I think, is really, really important. And you also want to make sure that if you are using a filter, so you're making a cafetiere or you're using a V60, go for a steel filter instead of a paper filter. This was news to me. So what happens when you use a steel filter, even with the AeroPress, you can get these steel filters with AeroPress and steel filters for your cafetiere. What happens is the steel filter allows more of the coffee's natural oils to pass through, which results in more of these beneficial polyphenols, the cafestol, the K-wol, these CGAs, for a richer, fuller flavor, which is also very important, but more of that ends up in the cup as well. So steel is better than paper. What happens with paper is that, imagine like you've got some blotting paper and you're putting it on your skin. You're blotting the oil, you're collecting a lot of that oil, so it takes it off your face, which is a good thing if you're, applying makeup or whatever. I don't apply makeup, but if you're blotting, you're taking those oils out. When it comes to coffee, you don't want to take those oils out. You want those natural oils to pass through, resulting in that more beneficial cup of coffee that you ultimately drink. So you don't want those oils to go through. You want a steel one. Steel doesn't trap the oil, allows it to pass through, whereas paper will trap it, unfortunately. So steel is definitely the way to go. So that's the fourth thing. And the fifth thing is the type of coffee. So if you're looking for the most benefits from your coffee, you want to keep it black. So just a bit of hot water or a sprinkle of cinnamon and turmeric if that's your thing. I personally just want to taste the flavors of the polyphenols in my cup, but black is the best way to drink your coffee. Avoid sugar, avoid syrups, avoid heavy cream. These are things that are not only going to be damaging the taste and the flavor of the coffee, but they're also going to be adding extra calories and extra nutrients that can lead to weight gain, etc. We already have too much sugar in our system. So you want to ensure that you're just having black coffee. This is the best way. Milk and the effect of milk on coffee's nutritional and functional properties is a little bit controversial. So the potential for milk in a negative sense is that some evidence suggests that the milk lowers the coffee's antioxidants because the milk proteins bind with the coffee's beneficial compounds, which basically traps them into the digestive tract where they cannot be absorbed into your body, and then you excrete them out. That's one theory as to why milk may not be beneficial. But there may also be a positive or neutral effect. There are other studies that demonstrate that milk's impact can be minimal depending on the type of milk that you use, depending on the amount. If you're just putting a splash of milk in, maybe that's not going to have that much of a difference compared to a latte or a flat white. The milk fats may actually help protect the phenolics, these compounds that you find in coffee during digestion, meaning that a higher concentration of these chemicals are actually delivered for absorption. That's another theory. My take is that, there isn't a clear answer, and I think it really depends on what you enjoy. Personally, I think the best bet is to go black if that's how you enjoy it. But if you need a splash of milk, or you need a creamer that might be made out of powdered coconuts or collagen or something to that effect, for you to enjoy the benefits in this cup, then that's up to you. But I personally would go black. That has been demonstrated to be the best in terms of what we know about these polyphenols. So that's everything you need to know about coffee in terms of the dose, when you should be drinking it, the quality that you should be looking for, organic, polyphenols, etc., etc. As a bonus, I would say you need to slow down and enjoy the ritual. So caffeine is a stimulant, and if you take the time to savor the flavors in your coffee in a relaxed state, it can really enhance your experience. So instead of rushing, the way you drink coffee, like on the way to the station, the tube, on the bus, you're often doing something else at the same time. Slow down that whole process from brewing to sipping. Pick out your favorite mug. Take time in that wonderful state to enjoy the aromas. That journey of enjoying coffee will lead to a completely different experience. So, that the process of bringing the coffee beans to your machine or to whatever device you have to make your coffee is incredible. And I think just taking some intentional moments to enjoy that will change your experience of the coffee itself. It means that you're not going to have as much of a stressed response to coffee, and we're not using it as a stimulant, or we're also using it as a moment of mindfulness as well. Here's some quick fire questions from the community. So question number one that we'll put on the screen here: is decaf coffee as healthy as regular coffee? Yes, it is. So there are some preserved benefits of decaf if you use that mountain water method to preserve the polyphenols whilst removing the caffeine, particularly if you are sensitive to caffeine. But the caffeine does have some extra benefits as a performance aid. So one of the reasons why I have my coffee first thing in the morning is because I will go to the gym thereafter, and that will increase my performance. Caffeine is very well reported to be a performance enhancing drug, essentially. That will increase the amount that I can push, the weights and the strength that I can exert. It will increase the fatty oxidation level. So fuel switching from just using sugar, which is our primary fuel source, our preferred fuel source, to fats, so the fats that we store in our subcutaneous tissue, visceral fat, etc. This enhances that metabolic switch. And the caffeine obviously is the performance effect. So it doesn't have those benefits, but it will still have the other benefits of the polyphenols to cancer health, to cardiovascular health, metabolic health, etc. So there are some benefits there. Question number two: what if I don't like coffee or can't drink it? Well, whilst it can have health benefits, I'm not saying that you need to drink coffee to stay healthy. If it isn't your thing, that doesn't matter. But you can get other polyphenols and rich numbers of polyphenols from other sources of drinks. So green tea is wonderful. It's got epigallocatechin gallate, which is this wonderful chemical that, again, has antioxidant value. Green tea does have caffeine in, so it's something that you've got to be wary of if you are sensitive to caffeine, if that's the reason why you don't like coffee. But there are other non-caffeinated drinks as well: raw cacao, maca, hibiscus tea, rich sources of polyphenols. And we've done videos around other anti-inflammatory drinks that will link somewhere here as well. Another question: should I drink coffee first thing in the morning or wait? Now, there has been a trend to recommend delaying coffee ingestion in the morning by about an hour after waking to avoid disrupting the body's sort of normal wake up process, cortisol levels, etc., and prevent an afternoon crash. There isn't much scientific evidence to back this up. Unfortunately, I can understand the hypothesis because in the morning when you wake up, you've got this big cortisol spike. And coffee, by virtue of the fact that it is a stimulant, has been shown to, again, increase cortisol. So it's almost like you don't want a double whammy of this cortisol and then leading to a bigger trough thereafter of your cortisol level, which leads to this corresponding crash. Again, there isn't much scientific evidence to back up that advice. However, I do think because coffee is a diuretic and it's not hydrating because it's a diuretic, it might be advisable to first hydrate for the first 30 to 60 minutes of your waking period, because you've essentially been on a fast overnight for however long you've been sleeping, 6 hours, 8 hours if you're lucky. And you want to hydrate before. That's why when you go to the bathroom in the morning, your urine is generally concentrate. You want to hydrate first and then perhaps have your coffee a little bit later on. I personally like to delay my coffee because I don't want to feel psychologically like I'm tied to a stimulant in the morning to wake myself up. Actually, if you just wait for that cortisol rise, which is very natural, goes up in the morning, that will wake you up anyway. You don't need a coffee first thing in the morning to wake you up. That's more of a psychological crutch. And I would say if you delay it for that reason, that's probably more likely to have those purported benefits. That's probably why people might have anecdotally reported benefits of delaying their caffeine intake. If you want to learn about the worst drinks for longevity, check out this video that I've done here that looks at the popular drinks that are on the market that are actually antithetical to healthy aging.